Okay, so hello and welcome to my talk. Oh, I just dropped. Okay. So hello and welcome to my talk. My name is Martin Jurášek. I work as a UX game designer in a company called Pixel Federation, Europe, Slovakia, Central Europe. So I got a lot of things to share with you guys, but we got limited time. So today I'm going to share with you our case study, how we developed our game when we decided to go for a mobile. Because for those of you guys who are not familiar with Seaport, it is a mobile free-to-play game, or let's call it cross-platform game, where you as a player become a captain who gets to manage his port, who gets to manage his fleet of ships. You get to trade, fulfill contracts, etc., etc. So many interesting things you can do inside our game. And I have a confession, because when we launched our game back in 2015 on Facebook, there was no tutorial whatsoever. And I know, guys, we are here on a conference, we're talking about best practices, what to do, what is working well. Disclaimer, this is not working so well. Having no tutorial is definitely not a takeaway from today's talk, and we'll get there eventually how it worked out for us, having a tutorial as compared to having no tutorial. But I'm going to share with you some UX tips, what we did as something extra to just rather only focusing on the actual tutorial. So when we launched our game, there was no tutorial, and the game looked like this a couple of months before the actual release on the Facebook. So as you can see, we had a lot of work ahead of us, and when we were talking about classic tutorial like this, there was no time for that. So the original plan in a development was that we'll have this type of tutorial like this. You're all familiar with this type of tutorial. Yeah, the guide shows up, it tells you what to do, what works, what doesn't work, and what you are supposed to do. Sometimes he forces you to do something. So we're all familiar with tutorials, so I'm not going to put emphasis on this mechanic inside the game. But when we launched our game on Facebook, KPIs weren't so bad, so originally we intended to work on a tutorial since day one after release, because you cannot afford to have a game without tutorial. Game was released, there were so many different problems that we almost forgot about tutorial, but since KPIs were doing so well, for almost 2.5 years we had no time to focus on developing any tutorial mechanics. So then there was a breaking point when we know that, okay, we cannot do it like this forever. We need to develop an actual functional tutorial mechanic. And we know it's going to be a long sail, pun intended, ahead of us. And that breaking point was going on a mobile, because mobile is super competitive, too many different devices, Android, iOS. So we knew that if we want to go global, we want to launch our game on both of these platforms, we need to have a working tutorial. So a lot of work needed to be done in order to have a functional tutorial. And we as game designers are always curious, and we started thinking, okay, can we do something extra other than just waiting till that feature gets developed? Because getting the tutorial required a lot of development work, but we as game designers can do so much more than just focusing on one functional mechanic. So what we did instead is that, since our game was running and performing, we started collecting insights. We talked with our analytic guys, and right now we're looking at our funnels, and basically this is the new player funnel, which kind of shows you what type of action was done inside our game. And based on these insights, you can easily identify a couple of problems. So now that we're looking at this top funnel here, we see that only 33.8% of players managed to collect actual cargo from the ship, which kind of sucks if your game is about chips, yeah, and about getting material. So the first gap you can see is the players which register and did something. There's a huge drop-off, but this is usually related to some kind of technical issue, so that there's not much for us game designers we can do about it. And the other big gap, and I'm going to talk about this one, is about once the player buys the ship, he doesn't get to send it. So if we go a little bit into more detail, only 56% of players purchased ship. As I said, it's quite problematic if your game is about ships. And even if they manage to buy the ship, they still do not interact with the ship. So, and even if we're talking about exploration, which is a big part of the seaport exploration type of game, 89% did not get to see any type of exploring inside of our game. So, moving on, we tried to fix those bottlenecks, and as I said, the problem is that a lot of players do not buy the ship, but actual real problem is that if they manage to buy the ship, because you can do it easily with the with that tutorial which was currently in development by the time, and once they buy the ship, they do not interact with it. So, okay, we can do a couple easy tricks. We do not require any development time, and maybe it could work for us. So today's takeaway is, and maybe you just already found out as I was talking about this, that we don't have time for that, obviously. So long story short, tutorial is only one of the tools you can use as a game developer in order to design perfect onboarding experience. But you shouldn't put all your focus only on tutorial. There is so much more. And in today's talk, in my case study, I'm going to focus on just one thing, what we did. So as I said, the problem is once the player gets the ship, in our case, it was Santa Maria. He never sent it. He never set it on a sale. So we inside our team started thinking about it. Okay, for us, we've been working on the game for almost 3 years, even before the game was released. So for us, it was kind of obvious. Yeah, you just tap the middle icon, the map, the ship goes on the map. So it makes sense for us, but actually. The understanding of these mechanics was not so clear because the data says those interactions were not so clear, and here is the actual data which supports this claim. So when we identified this as a problem, we tried to do as much as we could for without requiring any developer's work or any complicated developer's work, because they were building a new mobile client, new UI, and there were so many things that needed to be done in order to have a mobile version of this game. So first thing we did, and actually it's going to be only 5 steps, and then I'm going to share with you some results, is that we tried to improve the clarity step by step. So yeah, so probably the icon was not working so well, and we decided to change it. So new icon. How did we decide that new icon should be a steering wheel of the ship? Well, usually you can just decide we want a new icon, then you can argue with your art director, and you can have an argument like who is more experienced or what. But what we did instead is we did an icon labeling. So assignment for the art director was, I want to have new set of icons which could represent the actual ship dispatch. And those icons look like this. And then once we ran the test, and this is like the detailed process how we did it. But long story short, the winner was the steering wheel. It was done in 2 days. You want to take a picture, I guess. But I'll be sharing those slides, so no worries, because it's really detailed. So long story short, this icon was the winner of this icon labeling test. So. Okay, so we just improved our interaction, probably. Can we do something else? Yeah, we came up with the idea of dynamic tooltips. So these tooltips will show for a new player, because for older players it could be kind of bothering, So we made a set of rules when this type of dynamic tooltips should show up. Yes, this was the type of mechanic which required some developers' work, but it was really simple to implement. So. In different aspects of the game, in early stages, we added this type of dynamic tooltips. And developers were really happy because we're not doing some kind of special hacks which would require to do some kind of problematic implementation. Just the basically new dynamic tooltip mechanic, which was easily which was possible to be used in the later stages of the game as well. So even here. So moving on, we just did already 2 steps, and it's starting to look better. And then we decided, okay, like maybe we shouldn't be afraid to change even game design rules if it makes sense for us. So what we did, we got rid of this icon, because this icon represented you can send a ship to the docks, which is definitely not the first interaction you want the new player to have with your ship, because the ship basically disappears. We want your ship to go on a sea, open sea, and do some contracts. So we got rid of this. Once again, it could be done with hacks. If it's a new ship, then this button should be hidden, stuff like that. This is a developer's hell. So we changed the actual game design rules. So new game design rule: if player owns in total less ships than his capacity of the fleet, he's not able to send ships to docks, because that doesn't make any sense. So once again, we are happy, developers are happy, and the game is improving step by step. This is like really simple. Still, we're not talking about big mechanics. And this is something that we shouldn't forget about as game developers, because once we identify problems, often we're looking for really big killer features, big changes which should dramatically improve your game. But sometimes even doing this type of small changes can help you a lot. So 3 steps, already getting better. And there is the one last button, which is kind of extra. We want to give you only one option. This is the upgrade button for the ship. Now that I showed you a couple of steps, how we solved the previous issues, how could we do it? Well, we changed the ship, basically. We went from Santa Maria to Lake Grace, and this is the ship which is already available in the shop with 5 stars, fully upgraded with 5 stars. So basically, it looked like this. The ship was fully upgraded. It had even better stats, so maybe the player could be more attached to this kind of better looking ship. But in the end, it looked like this. So basically, the new ship is much better. As you can see, this is the first interaction for a new player in the couple of months before, and after the only four changes, it looked like this. So I think we're done and ready for sale. Yeah, let's see the data. Not yet, because what's happening? The problem is that there was one reality-related mechanic, and that mechanic was that once player buys a new ship, the ship starts sailing towards your port, and then it kind of docks, and it took a lot of time. I know it was realistic, but the usability wasn't there, so we changed this rule. If the docking slot is open and you buy a new ship, it shows up immediately. So, but this, once again, this change, this small developer's rule, it made a difference of 30 seconds, and that was also a game changer for a player if he even sees the new ship. So let's talk data finally. So this is the original unclear interaction. Only 69% of the ships which were purchased were sent. Yeah. After we did these changes, 85% of purchased ships were sent. So, which is dramatic increase in terms of interaction with the game. And as you could have seen, it wasn't nothing special. Yeah, not a big feature, just really small iterative changes. So, based on these results, we are really motivated to try even more. And we started experimenting with upgrade marks, retention chest, changing ZZZ, like sleeping notifications about production buildings, but we don't have that much time to talk about these details. Some of them worked for us, some of them not. And let's go forward. We even try to fix explorations. Once again, just by combining the level design and map design, we try to create new destinations, move exploring a little bit forward. It was not like developing a new features. We just moved the content a little bit forward, maybe even a little bit further to the actual home port, so the player would see that. So as you can see, really a huge amount of small iterative changes for the game designers, which did not require that much of developers' work. So it worked for us. And what does this mean? As I said, this is today's takeaway. You can do so many small things as a game designer, and you shouldn't forget about them. Tutorial that would not help you. Of course, tutorial can guide you from point A to the point B, but the question is if the actual understanding of the game will be there. And it is not guaranteed, because tutorial can always force you to do that thing, but maybe you will not understand the game in the end. So let's talk about the actual tutorial. As I said, it was a guide mechanic. It was the NPC triggered by various events. It had two purposes. The first one was just to show up, and he kind of explains you a little bit more about things that just happened in the game, or he was trying to force you to do actual stuff. This is the basically guide forcing you to buy a new docks, which kind of leads you to buy a new ship, and then you get to dispatch the ship. So basically building up to that actual interaction with the ship. So once we had this tutorial ready, we did around 5 iterations with the Playtest Cloud, which is a really nice online platform where you can test your game. You just submit the build, and then your players, then these testers will play your game. They will comment out loud, and you can see the actual video how they interacted with the game. So it's a really nice tool to fix your usability issues. So this is the Playtest Cloud, and once we're feeling ready and deadline was there, we launched the game with A/B test, and we compared the performance of the game without tutorial and with tutorial. So this is the actual data, the actual funnels as we have seen at the beginning. It's quite hard to get a grasp on this data, so I did a couple more comparison, and this is the difference. So as you can see, and as I have said at the beginning, definitely you want to have a tutorial inside your game. It's not something new, but we get the data which kind of even supports that having no tutorial is definitely not a good practice at all. So, and now going back and talking about the question which was ships dispatch after purchase. Well, we had 85% after our small changes, and now with the guide, we managed to reach 96%. And as you remember, previously it was only 59%. So that's a really huge improvement, especially if your game is about ships. So great success for us. And thanks to this type of small actions and then the guide mechanic, we managed to reach day one retention of about 40% during soft launch phase, which for us was really, really good, especially in our genre. It's not super casual games, which usually are able to manage around like 40, 50, 60%. For us, 40% was really, really good. So this is the actual data, and I thank you for your patience. And if you get any questions, I'm here on the stage or afterwards.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I can ask a quick question first before I'll go over there. So with your tutorial tooltip stuff, was it coder placed or was it designer placed?
Could you?
So the reason I ask is because increasingly the projects I'm working on, we're getting the developer teams to create the tooltip system so that it's actually implemented by a designer, not actually implemented by the code team. Have you done that kind of thing, or have you done it differently?
Well, actually, these dynamic tooltips were done by developers, basically. Well, we created the actual points where it should be activated, and also the localization codes for them, but they needed to.
So just thought I'd add, because we found it incredibly useful to build a tooltip framework that the designers use, because it means that we can actually do testing cycles vastly more rapidly, and we're not taking away the cost and expense of the development team at the same time. But we're also adding in conditional tooltips, so the tooltips will come in under certain conditions, which their variables are exposed to the designer to put in. And again, that makes it amazing, because if you find that someone's not, I mean, this particular one I'm thinking about is a word game. If we find that people aren't looking for the word properly, we wait a certain number of seconds and then we do the reminder.
Yeah, you can also do it with the triggers, like after a couple of seconds of no interaction, the tooltip should show up, and even like hand, whatever.
Yeah. And I think that sort of stuff is amazing. I mean, by the way, I'm a huge fan of what you're trying to do there. We had a question here, so if you've got the microphone, I'm not too sure.
Yes, so you mentioned you did some other methods other than onboarding tutorials to get people to learn the game. Can you maybe share what some of those things?
Well, what we've been trying to focus on mostly was to do a lot of those playtest clouds, because usually when we did this, these 5 iterations, like here, I didn't want to go into too much detail, but you can even see how they rated the game. And what was really interesting for us, that after the actual gameplay, there was a survey done. There was a survey where there was a set of questions which they answered, and what helped us. Well, basically, the results from that surveys helped us to realize what were the actual most fun parts of the game. So, for example, those players, they really appreciated the exploring phase of the game. So this kind of helped us to realize, okay, maybe we need to put it a little bit, maybe we can expand on that type of emotion inside our game, because before that, it wasn't so popular.
That's after the game's live already. You put those surveys in, or was it still in testing?
Sorry?
The games were already live on the App Store and Google Play when you did?
No. These tests were run even before the actual soft launch. So basically, we developed a build, we shared it on this platform, and they played it. So yeah. And of course, the game was already running on Facebook. So
we'll just sneak in one extra quick question.
As far as the a number of changes you made from one iteration to the next, did you focus on one particular funnel step for each iteration and only change things relating to that step? Or did you, like when you put the tooltip system in, did you expect that that would be across the entirety of that that funnel?
Well, the thing is, like how we approached this whole process, it was in a lifespan of around like 4 months, and basically, if I haven't done this talk, we wouldn't even realize what type of changes what was the actual impact of those changes, because we needed to do a lot of stuff. We knew about a lot of problems. So in some builds, we just implemented only one change, and in some builds, we implemented, like a couple of changes. And like scientifically speaking, it will be really nice to just implement it step by step, then have a talk with the analytics guy and doing the proper A/B test. But in some cases, there was basically no time for that. I know. So
just tracking an overall improvement, and you could see that every time.
Yeah. Because especially in some cases, one thing is that once you don't have anything. And you want to implement a new feature, you just do it, and and sometimes you just try to improve already existing features. So, but it's been a huge mix for us.
Thanks.
But it definitely wasn't the best development process for us, and it could be done definitely better. But it's part of the learning process. So.
And on that note, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.